Welcome to our video application series and ATC's timeline video. At this point, we expect you have made all the changes to your application explained in previous revisions. After you've entered or edited all the data in your application to the best of your ability with real and verified data, you are now ready to move on to the ATC application timeline process. We're going to take your completed application and build a timeline. To complete this timeline, you will use only the data collected in your application. This is to ensure that we're presenting a unified message to the airlines. Essentially, we're changing the format of the information in your application, so we can see exactly the data presented to the selection computer program. Due to the way the online application is organized, our brains are not well suited to find errors in the data. In an effort to see the data differently, we're converting the application data fields into a linear picture. This will allow us to see problematic holes between data points. From this linear picture, we can determine data that could be causing problems or missing. Once any issues have been identified, we can make the appropriate fixes to your application. The timelines that exist in your application are address history, education history, professional development, which is a subset of the education history, employment history, and military employment or unemployment. Please note military employment or unemployment may not apply to you. Completing the ATC timeline is a simple process. To get started, you'll need a printed version of your application, a pen or pencil, and ruler if you prefer perfectly straight lines. Start by printing the appropriate number of pages needed to complete your timeline. Each page of this timeline represents 3 years' worth of data. For most, the timeline will start from your high school graduation date. Suppose it's been 12 years since graduation. You'll need to print 4 timeline template pages, because 12 years divided by 3 equals 4 pages. It's a good idea to print a couple extra template pages in case you make mistakes, or need to redo a page due to issues with legibility. Start at the top of the page by filling in your name. Complete the remaining fields at the top of each page to reflect the dates you are plotting on each individual page. It is very important that you complete the page number fields in the top right to stay organized. Just below the name, you'll see the word year. Write the year you were plotting in that box. The gray and white checkered boxes below represent the months of that year. And the white box below that is a dialog box. Begin by turning to the Education History section in your printed out application to view your high school education entry. Please note, if you have successfully completed any professional development or flight training before your high school graduation date, please start by plotting those entries first. For the sake of this training module, we will start by plotting your high school graduation date first. You're going to plot the first point on the top line in the Education History section of the timeline template. Write the date you started high school in the From field, and then draw a horizontal line across the gray and white month boxes to plot the month and day you graduated high school. Mark the end date with a vertical line on the last day that you attended. Be sure to write the month and day in the white box below. In the Professional Development section, you will plot each certificate or rating as you received it. The end date is always the successful check ride date. Any data in your application that has a from and to date associated with it will be reflected in this timeline. The idea here is that you were plotting the days that you stated you did something. It is critically important that we can see the month and day for the from and to date for every event in your application, which will be plotted in its respective section. You're simply lining out, from this date to this date you attended high school. From this date to this date you attended college. From this date to this date you were working on this particular rating. From this date to this date you were employed at this particular job. If you were in the military as active duty or reserve, you need to plot that in the timeline in the military section. By the same token, if there was a period of time that you were unemployed or furloughed that you've already entered into your application, you're going to plot that in the unemployment/military section. Once all the data is plotted, We should then look for gaps of 30 days or greater between any of these timeline categories. Let's look at a timeline example. Jody Pilot filled in her name in the appropriate field. The date range we're looking at on this page of the timeline is from 2008 to 2010. It's page 1 of 6. Right below Jody's name, you can see the first year is 2008, then 2009, and then 2010. This form is built in the 3-year format. Jody attended high school from July 10th of 2004 and graduated May 22nd of 2008. You're just going to line out the boxes which represent the months until you graduated. Put a vertical line on the gray and white line below and write 05/22. That way we know what day you graduated. Write the name of your high school in the white dialog box below. You're plotting this in a year-by-year process to engage your subconscious. Going year by year means that you are plotting chronologically only the events that began in 2008. You'll hunt down all the data points in your application that took place in 2008. That will require you to physically flip through your printed applications to find the from dates beginning in 2008. After plotting each event, you will cross them out on your paper application to indicate that the event has been plotted. By going through your application and plotting everything year by year, we're able to draw on your subconscious and pull in memories to help corroborate other data in your application. Let's talk a little more about gaps in your application. In this example, Jody Pilot graduated from high school on May 22nd of 2008, and then went off to the University of North Dakota on November 17th of 2008. There's a 6-month gap of unaccounted for time in her education history section that is greater than 30 days. That could be flagged in the computer program and cause a problem. But if we look down to the professional development section of her timeline, starting on September 17th of 2008 through April 14th of 2009, Jody was working on her private pilot certificate. That training event closes the gap between high school and when she was attending UND, thereby reducing the gap of unaccounted for time. There is, however, still a gap of greater than 30 days between high school graduation and the beginning of her private pilot training. Again, this is something that could be flagged by the selection program. Let's look down the page to the other timeline sections to see if there's some other data points that fill the unaccounted for time gap. Here, she would have plotted any employment in 2008. In Jody's case, there isn't any employment listed here. We look down to the next section and see there is no military service or unemployment logged. So now what? This means she either has employment that she's forgotten, or she has not yet identified this period as a time of unemployment. As you can see, the timeline shows us the 2 data points that are problematic or missing, and where the solution may be.